welcome to the show, Fabio.
Detective Paul, hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining me. For those who don't know, you and I met through our mutual friends, Pete and Phil, when you appeared on our Trouble with Writing podcast. And at that time, I was so fascinated with what you were saying to us. I felt like I needed to have more conversations with you. And in that format, there were three of us vying for your attention. So I'm really excited to have you on the show and ask the questions I wish I had then.
Thank you.
So thank you.
You're making me feel like famous or really important. Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I've met a lot of people in the last few years doing these projects online, probably more people than I would meet in social life. And it's always fascinating because of the technology and social media, we're able to meet each other, even though, if I'm not mistaken, right now you're in Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm in Canada. So this is an amazing opportunity. And if we didn't do these things, I think it'd be a waste of the internet's capability, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Technology these days. I mean, I wish I had that. You know, when I was a learner of English, I only had, well, not only, but I had websites. Well, there was Skype 10 years ago, but nothing. I mean, this is really, it's connected the world in a totally, can't say it. It's connected the world in a way that nobody, I think, would have thought it was possible, right?
When I grew up, you know, I grew up in the age before internet and cell phones and all of that. So we just didn't meet people unless we traveled that were outside of our culture or country. The only way to meet people was to travel. And even back then, doing things like school exchanges or learning abroad just wasn't very common. So it never entered into my mind at that age. I thought I was kind of isolated in Canada, and even further isolated as sort of a isolated, shy kid. So as an adult to have these opportunities, it's a tremendous, tremendous reward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get started with some questions, Fabio, if you don't mind. I'm going to interrogate you a little bit. I want to share your experiences and your insights with the viewers. A lot of our viewers are English learners around the world, various countries. Some of them are English teachers. Either way, I think you have a lot to share with them. So let's start with the basics. Who is Fabio Cerpelloni?
Perfect pronunciation.
Okay. Who is Fabio, and how did you become the man that you are today? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I am many things, I think. I was an electrician 15 years ago when I left high school. Then I worked as a electrical designer, making technical drawings on computers, and that was really a job that I didn't want and I didn't like. So I moved to London. I started learning English. I realized that I could learn English. English was, when I moved to London, I had an intermediate level of English. I think I was a strong B1 student. So intermediate. And then I realized that I could communicate well, I could understand other people. And the more I realized that I could, have conversations with real people, the more English became something that I really loved using and studying as well. It wasn't that boring school subject that I had, that I'd studied in school. In school, I just studied rules and I translated sentences. I didn't even have listening lessons. So then I thought, okay, I can communicate. I'm improving. I want to improve more. And then I realized that I could become a teacher of English, because I found out that there was this teacher training course called CELTA. And I thought, okay, I can actually teach English. It's amazing. This is what I want to do next. And from then, that was 2011. I took exams, the first certificate in English, the IELTS, and then I moved to Australia. But when I discovered that I could teach English, I thought, okay, this is where I'm heading now. I want to become a teacher. And I was even more motivated. I got even more motivated than before.
That must have been an amazing revelation that you, an Italian young Italian man, could be a teacher of English.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I thought, wow, so even a non-native speaker of English can actually teach English. To me, this was crazy, because all the teachers that I had, I took a couple of courses when I took the exams, and they were all native speakers of English, the teachers.
Right.
And I always wanted native speakers of English as a teacher. So I thought, who's going to hire an Italian speaker, an Italian native speaker, as a teacher of English? Nobody. But actually, that course was, it's a highly recognized teacher training course. So then I did it in New Zealand. I then moved to Australia. I lived there for 2 years, and then I moved to New Zealand, where I finally applied for this course. I got my CELTA certificate, and I started teaching in New Zealand. So this is to tell you how I became a teacher, basically.
Sure.
But other things. I'm also a nonfiction reader. I love reading nonfiction books. I have a blog. I have a podcast. I'm a minimalist, so I don't buy unnecessary things, which means I don't buy clothes. I don't buy expensive, gadgets like iPads, or I've got this microphone. Anyway, I don't spend a lot of money on objects, okay, apart from books. Yeah, I organize book clubs because I like reading. And what else do? I go running pretty much most weeks, most days. I love running.
What this philosophy of minimalism is really interesting. What does it do for you in your life? How does that? What is the advantage of that kind of lifestyle? Or is it really a lifestyle, or is it just sort of a general approach to things?
Well, I think it is a lifestyle.
Okay.
Because you can apply it to different areas of your life. For example, you can apply minimalism to how you teach English. Like, do you need materials, videos, recordings, lesson plans, textbooks, handouts for a lesson, to teach a lesson? Or is it maybe just talking to a student and helping the student say what he wants to say, adjusting the language and everything. So this is minimalism. You use few things to accomplish the same mission, to reach the same goal. And this is one thing. Minimalism on your website. Like I don't like those websites where you open the website and there are pop-ups, many things that you have to click on. You don't understand where you are.
Yeah.
My websites, I try to make it as simple as possible. So I don't want to add anything that doesn't need to be there. Of course, that's subjective, but that's another thing, another aspect of minimalism. I think you can apply to anything, to cooking, to furnishing your house. Yeah.
Do you find that it allows you to focus on the things that are of value to you better than if you had a lot of activity in your life? I mean, I struggle with that sometimes. Like you, I am many facets of Paul. I have many layers in many projects that I'm involved in. Sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming. And, you know, I'm older than you, so I have a life that's quite evolved and complex and a lot of demands on my time and responsibilities. And sometimes it's very overwhelming. And I just want to crawl into a very, very focused version of my life. Like recently, it's been beautiful weather. So I've been sitting on my patio with my laptop writing.
Nice.
And just listening to the birds and the insects. And I live in a very quiet area. And that is just so precious to me because most of the year I can't do that. Do you find that it allows you to focus on things of value to you?
Yes. And sometimes, you know, as a content creator and as a teacher, I often feel overwhelmed because you think, what should I do today? Should I record an episode of my podcast? Should I write a blog post? Should I, you know, what kind of content do I want to create today? And then, of course, because I'm a freelancer, so I work for myself. I don't work for a school anymore. You know, you have to be organized. And if you're overwhelmed, I think you need to select things. You cannot do everything.
That's
and there's a powerful tool that you can use. Maybe you've heard of this. It's called. It comes from a writer called Derek Sivers, and it basically it's called Hell Yeah or No. And Sivers, do you know this? Have you ever heard of?
I've heard of it, but I've never read it. Yeah.
Well, it's a little philosophy that tells you that when you're overwhelmed and there are many opportunities, there are many things that you want to do, and then another opportunity comes in. If you feel, if that opportunity makes you go, hell yeah, I want to do this, then that's a thing worth doing. But if you feel anything less than that, then you should say no.
Right.
So I try to apply this, and it's really, this writer, Derek Sivers, is a minimalist. So if when you feel overwhelmed, you think, do I really want to do this? Does this make me go, like recording a podcast episode, does this make me go, hell yeah, I really want to do this. This really excites me. If so, well, you go for it. Otherwise, you say, no, I'll focus on something else.
I like
and
that.
Really like that too.
Staying on the subject of your English learning and teaching journey, as you were going through this development from London to Australia and New Zealand and becoming a teacher, realizing you could become a teacher, then doing it, what were some of the challenges or things that were in your way, obstacles that threatened to stop that? And, you know, how did you overcome them?
My accent, I was really not worried, but I didn't want to have an Italian accent. And I think it was an obstacle because every time I would ask my girlfriend, do I sound like, when I would hear an Italian person speak English, I would ask my girlfriend, do I sound like that guy? And sometimes maybe she would say, well, you know, a little bit, because that's your accent. And I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear anyone say that I had an Italian accent. And this, well, looking back, I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a native accent. I think there's nothing wrong with that. You're in charge of your learning journey, so you decide what your goals are. I don't think you should let teachers decide or set your goals. But really, now I think, well, was that really important? Was that really something that, I mean, it didn't affect communication. It was just a matter of identity. So that made me feel, it slowed me down a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
And also, I was obsessed with grammar. I was really obsessed with grammar. I wish I'd had your channel, The Grammar Detective. I didn't have it back then.
Didn't exist. Yeah.
But grammar, I loved studying grammar, and I saw language as a group of grammar rules and structures. I didn't really see language like I see it now, which is really a tool that allows us to understand each other.
Yeah.
And so that one too slowed me a little bit. Well, not a little bit, but focusing maybe too much on grammar rules, preposition, little things that I could have really maybe been more, I don't know, relaxed about.
Yet at the same time, you learned them, and your grammar is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered. Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question. How did I overcome these?
Yeah. Just time? Was it just a matter of time and comfort?
Becoming a teacher also made me see things in a very different way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned your accent, your Italian accent, and not wanting it. I think that's a very common thing that comes from that kind of self-consciousness as you enter a new space, a new realm. You're in the English teaching world. You become self-conscious about that. The way some teachers may become self-conscious about their appearance. I was a little bit self-conscious about my appearance and my general presentation when I became a teacher. I didn't look like all the teachers I worked with, and I was worried that it would bother the students or maybe intimidate them. I'm a pretty tall, big guy. On the other hand, your accent doesn't really affect communication. I think what affects communication much more is pronunciation, right? Which isn't the same as accent. If you're pronouncing the sounds and the letters and the words accurately, your accent can be strong or weak, it doesn't matter. And grammar, this is where grammar is important, because grammar is the structure through which we communicate the idea, the precision or the precise idea you're thinking. And without a strong control of grammar, it's not about following rules, it's about being able to control it so that the grammar communicates what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And if you have really strong control of grammar and you pronounce the sounds accurately, I think it doesn't matter how strong your accent is. In fact, as you mentioned, it's a form of identity. It can add to your individual style and identity. The same way, for example, as an English teacher from Canada, my accent is going to be different from English teachers from Australia. But will a student understand us? If we're using precision in our grammar and in our pronunciation, I think they will, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it makes you unique. Like, I love hearing Arnold Schwarzenegger's accent. He's got an Austrian accent, and I love hearing that. He's been living in the US for 50 years, and he still has that accent. Yeah, that makes him unique, really.
Yeah.
So, but again,
he speaks
it depends.
with precision and clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was a politician. So, yeah, it really, going back to setting goals, I think that is a thing that the student should decide. So we can help. You can say, we could tell them, look, doesn't matter. Pronunciation, your pronunciation is fine. We can understand you. But if that student tells me, no, I don't care. I want to sound American.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we could check why, because maybe he thinks if I don't sound American, then people will think. In that case, I would say, well, calm down, because
Yeah.
you know you don't. That's I think not a good reason for having a native accent. But if he's got good reasons, like I wanted to sound Australian because I loved the Australian accent. I wanted to sound British when I was in London because I loved the British accent. So if a teacher had told me, well, no, don't worry, don't try to sound Australian or British, I would have said, well, who are you to tell me how what I should sound like?
I had a guest on here last year, Fabio, and she is a professional accent adjustment coach.
Wow.
And she has taken a lot of heat for what she does. A lot of people say it's a sort of cultural imperialism of language, linguistic imperialism. And I really admire what she does because, first of all, she's a highly educated linguist and speech pathologist. And she found a need. There were people who wanted their accent to match their environment because they were being discriminated against in work. And they wanted to increase their career opportunities. That's a valid reason. So, for example, she worked with one Chinese person who was working in New York, and she was being discriminated against, even though her English was a very high level. So she wanted that accent reduction just to eliminate that possibility. And like you said, if someone really wants it, we should have no problem addressing it for them. And the guest I had on, she does great work for the people who insist on finding it or wanting that adjustment, right? But you're right, it's up to the student to decide their goals, as always, right?
Yeah.
So you have these challenges which sound like they're internal. They're your inside channel challenges rather than someone trying to stop you or some outside entity trying to stop you. But I'm curious to know, when you face these challenges and these doubts maybe, or self-consciousness, what motivates you to keep going? Once you were on the path to being an English teacher, a writer, a user of English, what kept you motivated? Because this is a long journey and it's daunting and it can be overwhelming and it can be discouraging at times. What kept you going?
Well, seeing success, seeing that, what I was doing worked.
Yep.
That made me, it's the motivational loop. So if you see that you're putting in the hard work and then you see results, maybe not immediately, of course, but you see the results, then you think, okay, so this is work. I'll keep doing this. So this was one thing. The second thing was having a clear goal. So becoming a teacher, that was a clear goal. But I think what really motivated me was the fact that I was going to have a job that I was going to love. Because before moving to London, as I said, I hated my job. I didn't want to be an electrician. I didn't want to be in an office making drawings on a computer 9 hours a day. And I still dream about those days sometimes. I have not nightmares, but bad dreams about the place where I was working at the time. And when I discovered English, the English language, and then the possibility to teach this language, I thought, I'm going to be happy for the rest of my life. So I really want to, I really want to have that certificate, that CELTA teaching training course. I want to be in a classroom and teach what I'm learning now. So really having a vision, but I don't want to, some people don't have a vision, and that's fine too, I guess. You will eventually find it by trying things. So that's why if you don't know if you don't know why you're learning English, I think that's fine, but you need to try out different things to see why you're learning. I don't know if I'm being clear, but
I think so.
by trying things, then you will discover what your purpose is for learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when you're a teenager, or maybe you're fresh after school. You've graduated. You are 20, in your 20s, and you don't know what to do. You know, I could go to university. I could go to I could go abroad for 1 year and see what happens. Or there are people who are in their 20s. They find a job that they don't like, and it was me.
Yeah.
But then they don't try to change. They don't try to experiment, to test things.
Yeah.
And what happens? Well, you will never find anything new. And I think you will be, sorry to say this, but I've seen people. I would have been miserable if I hadn't, if I kept staying in that place. So trying things and find your purpose. I know we're going, I mean, it's too philosophical maybe, but
no, it's great.
Yeah, having a goal, finding a goal. You don't need to have
Finding
it now,
a goal, yeah.
but you need to find one to keep you going. Yeah.
I think that's also great advice for young people who are told by parents and teachers you have to choose your career path early and then, you know, make the right moves. A lot of young people don't know what they want to do, what they should do, because they don't really know what the possibilities are. They hear the basic stuff from their parents and teachers, like be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, computer scientist, programmer now. They see a limited range of options. They don't realize that there are a million ways to make your life in the world. And as you said, this is what I also recommend to young people is, well, do something. Don't sit in your basement making TikTok videos unless that's your dream and just telling people, oh, I'm so miserable today. No one cares. Try something. And if you don't like it, well, now you know that that's not the life you want. Try something else. And if that's not what you like either, abandon that and try something else. So as you suggest, experimenting is one of the most powerful things. And when you're young, you can afford to do it, right? Especially if you're still living at home, for example, and you don't have financial burdens. Try new things. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think in a lot of cases, that's how we find direction. Try stuff, doesn't work, try something else. And eventually you whittle away because you can generalize the negative experiences, right? I once, when I was 18, on my parents' advice, I went up the road and got a job in a factory. And I spent a day taking straws, you know, like drinking straws, out of a machine, putting them into a box, out of a machine, into a box. And the clock was right in front of me. And it was the longest 8 hours of my life. And when I finished that day, I walked out and I said, okay, that's the worst experience I've ever had in my life. It's even worse than the day I was playing basketball in my school team in front of my parents and I tripped on my own feet in front of everyone. This was worse. So I knew at the end of that day, I was never going to work at that place again, nor any factory. So I could generalize that life I don't want. And it's fine for some people. For me, no way. So, you know, when you try these things, you can learn a lot about your needs and your direction. And eventually something will happen. You'll discover something, like you said, that is a hell yeah moment. Like, this is great. And now you're in the right path. So I think that's the best advice for anyone who's young and not sure what their direction is. That was my case. It sounds like it was your case too.
Yeah. Great point. Because you also discover what you don't want to do. So you don't need to find what you want to do. I mean, you know, we have this idea of finding your dream, you know, your vocation,
purpose or your calling.
Exactly. But we never talk about finding what you don't want. And to find what you don't want, then you, as you said, you need to go out and do things.
Yeah. And eventually something is left, right? When you knock all the dominoes off the board, something is left behind that goes, hey, try me. And when you try that, it may be the thing that's been waiting for you the whole time.
Yeah.
And it may be something unusual that your parents and teachers didn't recommend because they didn't know it existed. I'm sure when Steve Jobs and Bill Gates told their parents, I want to build computers, they told them, computers? What are you doing? There's no money in computers. Because at that time, it was the case. Michael Jordan, when he was young, there wasn't really a lot of money to be made in basketball. And it was a risky career choice. But he changed the paradigm. So a lot of times our parents' advice is based on the world that they inhabited or they grew up in. And their advice we should take with a grain of salt because it may not fit the world that we're entering as young people.
So don't listen to your parents. That's the message.
To a degree, yeah, right? Listen to them, but bear in mind their advice is dated. That's the case in all generations. Parents' advice is dated, right? Unless they're really hip and they're really staying up to date with all the changes and all the innovations in the young people's world, right? Like as a teacher, we get a chance to do that. I work with students ranging in age right now from 16 to in their 50s. With the young ones, I get to learn what they're interested in, what they're worried about, the music they like, the movies they like, the technology and the software they're using. That's a great insight. I'm not a parent, so I can't pass it along to my children. But a lot of parents don't relate to the young generation. So what advice can they offer them when they're not familiar with the world that that child or that young person is entering? The young people have to create the world that they want, not that their parents wanted, because that world really doesn't exist anymore.
But do you know that this is probably, it's a mindset that we've got here in the Western world? Because in some countries, it would be really like the worst thing that you can do, not following your parents' advice and not working, I think in India, probably, if I'm not wrong, or in Singapore, if your parents, if they want you to be a lawyer, then you need to go for that. But I don't want to talk about things that I'm not 100% sure about. So,
Sure. Yeah. But I think you're onto something there. I think in some cultures I'm familiar with, like Asian cultures that are based in Confucianism, there is a hierarchy at work. There is a reverence, more than a respect, but a reverence for tradition and for ancestry. But you'll see in places like that, change in those societies is hard to come by because they're always focused on the past and preserving tradition and following parents. Innovation is less likely to happen because ultimately any kind of innovation starts with this, right? Whoever innovated this kind of phone at one point said, Mom and Dad, the phone that you used is garbage. I can make something better. So innovation is sort of born out of a slight disrespect for the past or a rejection of the past.
Interesting.
I'm not saying it's better or worse. Those cultures are better at other things. But this is one reason perhaps the Western cultures have innovated so much. We don't need to adhere to tradition or the generational past as closely. But it's impossible to generalize these things. But we're also heading to something that I'm curious about, Fabio. Talking about young people and advice and this kind of thing. One thing I did not have as a young person, I'm curious about in your case, one reason that motivated me to be a teacher was that when I was young, I didn't have a lot of mentors around me. And there were times when I felt very lost and confused and really nowhere to turn for information. When you were young and you were on this English learning journey, did you have mentors? Did you seek mentors? Or did you have some in your life that really helped you?
Not really, but I got always inspired by the people I was working with. For example, in London, I was working with people from all over the world who had better English than me. Most of them, at the beginning at least. and I would listen to how they express themselves. And I heard many different accents. And I remember there was this Italian guy who didn't have an Italian accent. He'd been living in London for, I think, 5 years. And I thought, wow, he doesn't sound Italian. He sounds like the people here, the native speakers in London. And that really inspired me. So I don't know if he was a mentor, but I really looked up to him and to the way he expressed, the way he used English. Then I had another one in an English class, a Romanian girl. Her English was so beautiful, like harmonic, and the music of the sound of her words were really, it made me feel, wow, I want to, one day I'm going to speak like this, this woman here. So were they my mentors? I don't think they were my mentors, but they inspired me, and I found this inspirational moments many times when I listened to people, because I really listened a lot. I learned a lot by listening, by hearing things, by replaying the sentences in my mind. That's how I learned the most. I didn't really, also by reading, yes, but listening to me is still today, when I hear someone, if I see a word and I try to memorize it in a book, okay, maybe I'm able to do it, but as soon as I hear it spoken, then okay, it goes in. I don't know. Yeah. So I didn't really have mentors. I had good and bad teachers, but I did a lot of self-study. And so, no. Well, but what do you mean by a mentor? Like a person who, what do you mean by a mentor?
Well, a mentor can be a teacher, someone who actually helped you, supported you, taught you. But it sounds to me like you didn't have that necessarily, but you had some very inspiring role models that you wanted to be like, which is can be equally powerful, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's very interesting. I feel like I had very similar experiences. I didn't have a lot of people helping me directly, but there were a lot of people I looked up to and wanted to be like them in some facet or another.
Yeah, that's why I think, sorry, can I add one thing?
Of course.
I wrote this blog post about comparing yourself to others. Because
I saw that.
We usually say, well, don't compare yourself to other people, because you don't know, that you don't know if they've been speaking English for 20 years. So you're comparing yourself to someone who's had a different journey. But I think you should compare yourself to others when that makes you go, wow, I want to be like this. So when that motivates you, if it motivates you, I think comparing yourself to another person, you say, okay, I'm here, this person is here, I want to get there. That's a healthy way, I think, to compare yourself to other people. If, on the other hand, if you think, oh my God, I will never be able to speak like you, my English is, or whatever skill I have is not as good as yours, and it will never be, well, then don't do it. That's my message. Yeah.
This brings us to another great thing, a fascinating thing I've found in getting to know you. But what you're talking about, comparison, is something I've experienced a lot. And I remember when I was young, I was really interested in cinema and literature, but I always felt like the people that wrote books, novels, the people that made films, these were, and to be honest with you, I was actually told this by some people of authority, these were genius, gifted, special humans that were on this planet, and they lived in a faraway place that I could never reach. And they were, on the Mount Olympus, and it created this discouragement. But as I got older and I entered into a very different profession. I started meeting some of these people, and I realized, like, I should have known this, but as an adult, I realized, wait a minute, these are not genius, talented, magic, godlike people. These are very normal people. In some cases, they're not even particularly talented or intelligent, but they worked hard. They had some luck on their side. They never gave up in pursuit of their goals. And they focused on single-mindedly achieving what they achieved, and eventually they did. And they appear to be on Mount Olympus, and then we revere them. In the case of literature, especially, it took time, but I learned that what you read in a book, let's say, I don't know, this tome, Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, fabulous book. When you read that, you go, wow, this guy writes so beautifully. I could never do that. He's magic, he's a genius. And look how much he has written. How can you ever do that? And then you realize this might be the 20th draft he wrote. He had help from professional editors and translators. And he was probably wealthy enough to have lots of time on his hands to write a lot of pages. In the modern world, a lot of aspiring writers have a job to do, so having the time to write is hard to come by. But what you see is the final version, and it's as close to perfect as possible, and therefore it gets published. But that's the result of hard work. That's a result of a lot of what I call ass in chair, a lot of time sitting at the desk. So you have to have the time, you have to have the motivation, and the tenacity to keep going when you're tired and you feel like what you're writing is terrible. For me, that's the talent of a writer, right? Not just linguistic facility, but the talent of tenacity, writing the pages day after day after day, refining them, obsessing about them until they're beautiful. Now that brings me to something that I've learned about you that's fascinating. Not only did you learn English, not only did you become an English teacher, you write in English. And as a coach primarily of English learner writers, I find this really, really inspiring. I want to know at what point in your English learning journey you felt compelled to write with the language? Or were you a writer in Italian first, so it was a natural progression to eventually write in English too? Tell me about your writing journey, because you're a great writer.
Thank you. Well, thank you, because if you say so, it's really a compliment coming from a writing coach. Wow.
No, you're an excellent writer. I really enjoy reading what you write.
Thank you. I started. No, it didn't come from Italian, because I never wrote anything in Italian apart from emails. But in 2021, when I launched my blog and my website, I was working for Cambridge University Press for a project that they had called We Love IELTS. And it was a project to help IELTS candidates pass the IELTS. And I had to create blog posts for them. They call them mini lessons. And I would write, how I learned English and how I studied, how I prepared for IELTS, because I took IELTS in 2012. And I realized that, wow, I like writing, really like writing. So then I started my blog, and I would write. If I go back now and I read the first blog posts, I think they're terrible. But it's a great thing, because it shows progression. Mm-hmm. But it started with my blog. Like I said, I thought I need to have a blog, because that English teacher online has got a blog. That English teacher online has got a blog. Well, I must have a blog too. So I started blogging about fluency, language learning. And again, I think it's the same thing that happened to me when I went to London. The more I realized that I could write, the more I thought, okay, well, I want to improve this. I want to become a better writer. I haven't taken any courses so far, any writing courses, but the fact that I read a lot as well, I think the two things are connected because I love reading books. So probably it's the next step, writing. And I've written a book. It's actually here. Can I show it?
Yeah, please. Of course. Yeah. And we'll put all your links in the description.
Yeah, this is the proof copy from Amazon, and it's any language you want. It's a book about how I learned English. Okay.
Right.
Each chapter tells a story, but each chapter contradicts the next one.
Nice.
So it's really I keep contradicting myself in the book to show you that the best way to learn a language is there isn't such a thing.
Yeah.
So there isn't such a thing as, you see, I'm getting my grammar wrong here. There isn't, what's the structure here? There isn't such a thing as. There isn't.
As what?
Such a thing as best way to learn a language.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
There isn't such a thing as a best way.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. Yeah.
So the best thing is the thing that you like, basically, what you love. And this to tell you that I now really love writing sentences, like crafting a sentence.
Yes.
It's all about making decisions, right? It's all about finding choosing words, choosing the grammar, cutting things out, being a minimalist. So saying what you want to say in, with few words. And I really enjoy this. I actually now enjoy it even more than teaching. So that's why I've written a book, and I try to write every day and publish an article every week, or even more than one a week. So
yeah, you're very active. Yeah.
Yeah, I think now writing is where I'm going. Writing blogs, blogs for now, and the book. But the problem with this book is that I can't publish it on Amazon. I've just found out that I cannot put it on Amazon because I'm required by the Italian law to pay like 3,000 euros a year to publish a book. So I need to find a better way to do this. But this is Italy, so
interesting.
Because I would be an entrepreneur. I would be an entrepreneur. So selling my book I would have to open a fiscal position that shows that I'm actually an entrepreneur, that is making money out of a book.
And then you have a tax obligation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
We'll see.
Is there I wonder if there's a way for our viewers to get your book. Is there another way beyond Amazon?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Because I would need to find a publisher.
Right.
Or having a conversation.
Or a service there you can self-publish. I remember there was a bookstore in my neighborhood, and they had this gigantic machine with a USB. If you had your document file, they would publish the book. They would make copies, and then you can sell those or market those yourself. I wonder if there's something like that you can get access to.
I need to find out.
Yeah. It sounds like a great book. I'm really curious to read it. I love the idea of contradicting your lessons because, like in so many things, learning a language, there's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of contradiction. English is a very irregular, contradictory language. And it's good that learners get used to that, right? It's not just a matter of following the dogma or following the rules. There's so many irregularities to manage. Being a bit comfortable with ambiguity helps the learning process.
Yeah, and because we talked about accents, one of the chapters is keep your accent, but the next one is speak like a native. So it's all, it's all do this, to learn a language, you must do this. But in the next chapter, I say, no, do this, which is the opposite of what I said before.
Yeah.
And also it's also a way to rebel against those teachers, also people on YouTube, people on they say no, to learn a language, don't study grammar because focus on communication. And then you've got another teacher that says no, to learn a language you must study grammar because otherwise how can you improve? And then you say keep your accent, no, speak like a native. So all this here based on my personal stories, because I experienced all these things. Now I'm sorry if I sound what's the word, boastful, but it's been a long journey and I've seen many things.
Yeah, this is something I really admire about what you do, is a lot of your, not a lot, but some of your social media blogs and posts are critiques of this language learning environment, which I really appreciate because it's something I very much have sensed since I started becoming active with YouTube and live streaming and posting content on various platforms. And I'm starting to also produce content that's also critical of it. I've never thought of myself as like a grammar police. I'm not out there correcting everybody's grammar. What I do with my work is investigate what is out there. And there are a lot of people posting with various degrees of authority. Some of them are English teachers, some of them are just native speakers who think they're teachers. And a lot of them are very dogmatic. Do this, don't do this, say this, don't say this. They'll say things like, this is normal English, don't say that. Say better English or basic and advanced. And I really have a problem with that because, first of all, there are no synonyms. If we have two words in our language, it's because they're both expressing something different. So we need both. Because if we had two words expressing identically the same thing, one of them would have evolved into the garbage can over time, but they remain. So I say learn both. And these postings don't qualify what they mean by better English or advanced English. Who decides that and under what situation? And also, like a lot of content on social media, a lot of it is produced by young people. So what advice are they giving? Are they giving the advice that don't say this, and you'll sound like a native speaker? Fine. What kind of native speaker? A TikToking teenager? I don't know, but a lot of students I work with are not trying to sound like a native speaker teenager. They're trying to sound like a native speaking adult because they're in university or they're going into the professions and they want to speak better English for that context. None of that is accounted for in this social media space. So I want to hear what you think about what I'm talking about, this social media environment of putting out all this English learning content, some of which is really good, some of which is too short to really explain itself, and some of it is absolute garbage. Are you finding the same thing?
Absolutely, yes, 100%. I actually talked about this in today's episode of my podcast with another teacher. The problem is, I don't know if it's a problem, but now anyone can put out things on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to make two columns with basic English, advanced English, with no context, just a little, because it makes you look, you've got many words on the on your reel, on your Instagram
valuable
page.
Content.
Yeah, and you can teach it in 20 seconds, and it's a cheap way to teach English. I don't know if you're even teaching, but and it's dictionary content. I mean, who needs that? Anyone can use a dictionary. Not anyone, but we can learn how to use a dictionary and get rid of all those lists of basic native English. There's one, I've seen one about the don't say thank you. Say, oh, no worries, or other expressions. So apparently you can't say thank you anymore, according to the.
I've seen one that said, I saw one that said, don't say hello, how are you? Say, yo, what's up?
Yeah, well, at the job interview.
Yeah, try that. Try that and see how that works for you.
Yeah, but there
Who
are
are you trying to sound like?
Exactly. There are also some great content creators that
absolutely
inspire and educate. So it's maybe some people don't know that what they're doing is it's not really. But if it works, I mean, I want to ask you, if it works, should they stop? Like if people find it very useful, oh, thank you for this list of terms, keep posting these things. Well, then they will keep doing these things.
Yeah.
So should they stop? Are they doing it because it works? I don't know.
I think like most content in social media, there's no way to account for the viewer or the consumer of it. There's someone who's going to benefit from it and someone like you or I who might be upset about it or find it to be offensive. Ultimately, I believe in having more information than too little. So I can't say it's a bad thing. If I object to it, then the obligation is on me to do something better, to provide better content.
And you do already.
Well, I try.
Yeah.
But as I said in a recent post where I critique this, don't say this, say this, this sort of motif that's circulating, I said, look, it's better than nothing. And if you're in a country where English is hard to come by, and you're in an economy where you can't afford to work with a coach or study abroad, then social media English lessons are better than nothing, right? Yeah. It's great that we can do this. At a sort of a different level, I critique it because, like all things on social media, especially video, by virtue of the fact that something is presented on video, it looks authoritative, right? And by virtue of the way people deliver a message using an assertive statement grammatical structure, like dogs are better than cats, just by structuring the grammar like that makes it sound like a statement of scientific truth rather than opinion. And that can be harmful. And this is a problem on a much larger scale where people are consuming opinion, interpreting it as a fact. So it's easy to sound and produce content that sounds and seems authoritative, right? If you have good quality video and you seem like you know what you're talking about because you're speaking with passion and you're using the grammar of assertiveness, it's easy to believe that's the truth. And with language learning, if it's coming from a native speaker, a language learner might automatically assume that they are telling the truth about that language. The hidden truth that they may not be aware of is that there are a lot of native speakers of English who speak English poorly, really, really poorly. I hear bad English in my neighborhood all the time from native speakers. I hear it on television, right? A lot of, an authoritative media like television or movies, I hear tons of bad English. So I think it's up to the learner to be the consumer of all information, including language educational material. I think it's up to us to be critical thinkers and to take it for what it is, use it if it's useful, but also be aware that it might not be useful. Someone might be teaching you in a really cool post, they might be teaching you a slang expression that really offends native speakers. And if you go and use it when you visit Canada or the US, you might find it doesn't give you the result, doesn't make you friends.
Yeah, because language is context sensitive,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You can't really take a word from here and use it in a context, you know. Yeah. So the advice is be critical. Yeah. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
with anything, really, not just
Yeah.
educational content.
That's why I really appreciate some of the posts and the blogs that you have produced that are critical of this space, this social media educational space, especially the short form content. It's really hard to present really educational material in a very short format because you can't, there's no time to explain the context or when to use it, when not to use it. And especially with things like casual expressions or slang, not only are they context sensitive, like say this in this particular company, but when you're with this particular group of people, don't say it. There's that factor, but there's also time. Slang is time sensitive. Slang changes. The slang I used as a child is different than the slang children and teenagers use now.
True.
And the slang that they use today that's so hip and cool is going to be stupid and boring and trite in 3 years. By the time they're in their 20s, they'll look back and go, I can't believe I used to say like so often. Like.
This is what I always do.
Yeah, short form content doesn't allow that kind of depth. It's one of the reasons I started my show was to have a 1 hour format and sometimes 2 hour format where we could really investigate the language piece, a piece of language with some depth, and look at it from not only the purely structural aspect, but also the cultural elements, the contextual elements, the level of register. Is this appropriate in a formal register? Is it appropriate when I'm drinking beer with my friends, or, competing on a soccer pitch, football pitch? Different language for different situations, right?
Yeah, long form content, if you really want to go into the details, and also if you want to get a better understanding of anything. Like one thing is a YouTube clip, or not YouTube clip, an Instagram reel that lasts 10 seconds. Another thing is listening to a podcast that lasts 30 minutes. Another thing is reading a whole book about it. So the longer the content, the longer is the deeper the understanding.
Yeah.
Right?
When I first started making videos, I started making my series English Weirdness, and initially the reaction I got from people, thank you. Initially the reaction I got was, "Oh, Paul, you can't get 1 million followers on YouTube with 30-minute videos. You got to make them 5 minutes." I said, I don't care about the 1 million followers. I wanted to make a 30-minute, like a TV series, 30-minute length exploration of one grammar point each, so I could explore it with some nuance, because that's what everyone else is not doing. And I wanted to do something that differentiated myself. I wanted to do something that I thought was necessary. So if you really want to understand this grammar point, it's going to take 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you will find, I'm sure you found people who watched the entire 30 minutes of your video.
Absolutely. And they said it was really helpful.
Yeah. So.
And if someone can't watch 30 minutes of content, then that's not the audience I want.
There you go.
And that's not the audience who's going to really understand that grammar point. They're always going to be mystified. Well, they lost their chance, because there's the explanation right there. You just have to sit through it. Because some things, especially when we're talking about nuance, you can't deliver it in 10-second format on TikTok. You need time to look at all the different things that are happening in a very complex thing like English grammar.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the projects you're working on now and future projects, Fabio.
Okay. The most immediate thing is this book. I want to publish it, and I've been working on this for 1 year. I had a lot of fun writing this book. I think everything I know about language learning is in this book, and everything I would suggest is in this book. And now I wanted to publish it yesterday. Like the deadline for me was yesterday. But 3 days ago, as I said, I found out about this tax thing. So now I'm really, I want to get it out by the end of June. I don't know how, but I will find a way. So this is the first project. Then book clubs. I want to organize more book clubs for advanced C1, C2 learners of English. I tried book clubs before and they worked, but it's hard to find a group of people from all over the world who can meet all at the same time on the same day. And so this is what I need to fix now.
Yeah.
I want to have a community on a forum, like don't know if you know Slack. Like, okay, let's say Telegram, okay, an online group where we read and we discuss what we read. And the books that I want to read are, all nonfiction books about life, about productivity, creativity. So organizing book clubs for learners of English, and that's it. I don't want to focus on too many things. Otherwise, as we said before, then I also want to appear on other podcasts and like this one or other shows, and keep going with my content creations. I'm trying to write more. So 4 things: writing, book clubs, podcast, and my book. So publishing my book. These are the projects.
And are you still actively teaching as well?
Oh, yes. I'm teaching. I'm a freelancer. I work for a university in Milan. I've got private clients, and my day is, finished.
Yeah. And tell me something. Out of these nonfiction books that you have been reading, what's your favorite? Could you recommend one to our audience that they really must read, that you have got so much benefit from?
Yes.
Let's make a book recommendation here.
Okay. This one. This really... one? So only one?
Let's taste 2. How about 2 or 3? Your choice.
Okay. 2 and... okay, let's start with 2. This one... Oh, no, I've got the third one. Okay. Storyworthy. By Matthew. Okay. Yes. Engage, teach, persuade. Do you have it there?
Yeah, let me just mirror the screen so we can see that the other way around. Oh, it doesn't change it. Okay. So it's called Storyworthy.
Yes.
Okay, and the author's name is? Maybe
Matthew. Yeah, maybe, let me see. Settings.
If you go to the Restream settings, video, there we go, Storyworthy.
Okay, this one.
Great. Matthew Dix, okay.
So this is the book that made me start my podcast, Telling Stories. It's about why you should tell stories, how to find stories. It's the book that made me think that I'm a good storyteller, that anyone can be a good storyteller if you know how to tell a story. And it does that. It turns you into a great storyteller in maybe 5 hours. I don't know.
Is it talking about how to write or tell stories, fictional stories, or parts of your life and experiences? Oral stories?
Personal stories. The author is a master storyteller. I don't know if you know The Moth, the podcast, The Moth. It's a story slam competition in the US. And he's won, I think, over 60 times. Wow. It's a way to find stories every day. So every day, according to this book, you have a story to tell. You just have to look closer. Amazing, very inspiring.
Great, thank you.
This is How to Live by Derek Sivers. 27 conflicting answers and one weird conclusion. Each chapter of this book tells you the best way to live your life. But each chapter, guess what? Contradicts the next.
Very nice.
And this is the book that inspired my book.
Nice.
So each chapter tells a story about how to learn a language, but each story contradicts
Love
the
it.
next. And nonviolent communication.
Okay.
This is, I think this book, if everyone in the world read this book, the world would be a completely different, and applied what they read, would be a completely different world. The world would change really, because it's about communicating. When someone insults you, when you feel angry, there's a process that you can go through and really think, what does the other person feel? What is she feeling right now? And it's hard to explain. I would need to film a 30-minute video.
Yeah.
I think
We need another episode, and just a book review episode.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing one of those. But yeah, so nonviolent communications, how to live story-worthy. And but there are many nonfiction books that are, there's so many that more than we have time for.
Yeah. Any last words of advice for our viewers?
The 3 P's and the 3 R's. The 3 P's are passion, patience, perseverance. The 3 R's, going back to minimalism, are, don't remember these, repair, recycle, reuse.
Very
That's
nice. Great advice. Great advice. 3 P's, 3 R's, and
you'll be you'll be a minimalist and a great learner. That's how I sell things.
Thank you, Fabio. I bid you adieu, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show at some point in the future. Wish you all the best with your projects. And everyone out there, check out Fabio's links, read his work, follow him on socials, and you will learn a lot, as I have. Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you, Paul. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks for watching tonight's show. If you have an English grammar question, an English mystery, contact me on social media and send me a video of you asking the question. I'll investigate it on a future show. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to get all the updates about videos and events. If you're feeling generous, you can also donate to the production costs of the show at Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. Finally, until the next time I see you on Hardboiled English Live, I want you to keep learning English. Stay healthy and stay cool.